Hello viewers, today we are going to discuss on methodology of econometrics. Introduction. Econometrics is concerned with the measurement of economic variables. As you have seen the economic variables in the first unit, that is in the introduction about econometrics, where quantity demanded of a commodity depends on its various determinants. That is, quantity of demand depends on its price, its substitutes price, consumers income, taste, preferences, etc. The left hand side equation, that is quantity demanded, is a dependent variable, whereas right hand side of the equations that you have seen in the first unit of definition and scope of economics, it is explained in that the various factors will also influence the quantity demanded. Therefore, the economic variables means here the quantity demanded depends on its various factors. Number 1, price. Number 2, its substitutes price. Number 3, consumer's income. Number 4, tastes and preferences of the consumer. These are the variables. So, the relationship between quantity demanded and its various factors is known as economic variables. So, econometrics is concerned with the measurement of economic variables. How do we measure this? Suppose if the company manager wanted to increase the price of a commodity. When he increases the price, then he wanted to know the exact fall in demand. How many units he will be going to lose? That will be exactly measured with the help of econometric techniques. Therefore, to measure the economic variables, to forecast the future values, we need to study econometric methodology. There are several schools of thought on econometric methodology. However, the traditional or classical methodology still dominates empirical research in economics. Broadly speaking, traditional econometric methodology proceeds the following lines. We have to follow 8 steps. The first one is statement of theory or hypothesis. Then second one is specification of the mathematical model of the theory, and third one specification of the econometric model, then obtaining the data, then estimation of the parameters of the econometric model, next hypothesis testing, then afterwards forecasting or prediction, then finally using the model for control or policy purposes. Now, these steps we can discuss one by one. Step 1, that is statement of theory or hypothesis. Any statement which is there in economic theory is called hypothesis. Hypothesis is nothing but it is a statement of theory. We have to test this hypothesis whether it is accepted or rejected. Now, in macroeconomics, the well known Keynesian theory of consumption we will discuss. The fundamental psychological law is that men, women are disposed as a rule and on average to increase their consumption as their income increases, but not as much as the increase in their income. In short, Keynes postulated that the marginal propensity to consume, that is MPC, the rate of change of consumption for a unit say a rupee, change in income is greater than 0 but less than 1. What it is? According to Keynes, if 1 unit change in income leads to the marginal rate of change of consumption is greater than 0 but less than 1. In short, we can say that if income increases, our consumption will also increase, but how much? According to Keynes, it increases more than 0 but less than 1. The MPC will lie between 0 and 1. This is a statement of theory. Whether this statement is accepted or rejected, this can be examined with the help of econometric techniques. Then how do we follow to test this statement? Now we will discuss. Step 2, that is specification of the mathematical model of consumption. Keynes postulated that there is a positive relationship between consumption and income. As we have seen, there is a positive relationship between consumption and income. As income increases, consumption will also increase, but how much? That is measured with the help of econometric techniques. Now we express the Keynesian consumption function into the following mathematical model. As we have seen in the step 1 economic theory, that we can transform into mathematical model, that is y is equal to b0 plus b1 x, where 0 less than b1 less than 1. This is equation 1. Y means dependent variable and x is a independent variable. b0 and b1, these are parameters of the model. Why do we take this model, sir? Here we take simple linear regression model. To test the economic theory, we prefer simple regression model or multiple regression model. So in this example, y is consumption expenditure, x is income, and b0, b1 parameters of the model, where b0 is intercept coefficient and b1 is slope coefficient. This we can observe in the graph. On vertical axis, we have measured consumption expenditure, and on horizontal axis we have taken income. This b0 is intercept coefficient and b1 is marginal propensity to consume, that is MPC. Here we have seen if the income increases by 1 unit, 1 unit may be 1000 rupees or 10,000 rupees or 100 rupees. If our income increases, how many units of consumption will be increased? So, consumption is linearly related to income. This is an example of a mathematical model of the relationship between consumption and income, which is called the consumption function in economics. A model is simply a set of mathematical equations. If the model has only one equation, as in the given example, it is called a simple regression or single equation model. Whereas, if it has more than one equation, it is called a multiple equation model. The variable appearing on the left side is a dependent variable. That means, consumption expenditure is a dependent variable, and the variable appearing on the right hand side of the equation is x. This is income. So, the relationship between consumption and income can be measured with the help of simple regression model. Then in step 3, specification of the econometric model of consumption. In step 1 we have discussed about only economic theory. In step 2 we have transformed that economic theory into mathematical model. Then in step 3 we have to frame the econometric model. Why we have to change the mathematical model to the econometric model? Because so many factors will affect the consumption function, not only one factor, that is income of the consumer. Therefore, the relationship between economic variables are generally inexact. Therefore, if we want to collect the data on consumption expenditure and disposable income of a sample of say 100 families and plot this data on a graph paper with consumption expenditure on the vertical axis and disposable income on the horizontal axis, we would not expect all 100 observations to lie exactly on the straight line of equation 1, because in addition to income, other variables affect consumption expenditure. For example, size of a family, ages of the members in the family, family religions, etc. are likely to influence on consumption. Now we can see the graph paper, that is we have taken consumption expenditure on y axis and income on x axis. Here if we plot the data on consumption, if the income increases, how the consumption will change. That if we plot the 100 families observations, if you can get it like say for one observation is similar to the or nearer to the 45 degrees line, that is a slope line, then some observations are far away to the line. Why this? We have seen this, these factors means affect the consumption function. For example, size of family will influence the consumption, ages of the family will influence the consumption. How it is? For one family there may be a size of 5 members, but adults may be 2 persons and children may be 3 persons. The consumption differs, and in another family adults all may be adults only, their consumption also differ. And if you go on finding the observations, if the religion will also influence the consumption. For one particular religion the consumption may be different for particular item, and also for another religion the consumption also differs. That is why here the observations will not lie on the exact line. Therefore, we have to include the random term. These are all random variables. To know the influence of these variables, we have to include the statistical probabilistic random variable term, that is u, to the mathematical model, then it will become an econometric model. So, in equation 2 we have included u term to the mathematical model, that is y is equal to b0 plus b1 x plus u. So, this is third model. Then next in step 4 we have to obtain the data. To estimate the econometric model given in equation 2, that is b0 and b1, y is we known already, x also known variable, b0 and b1 we do not know, and u also we do not know. To know the influence of these variables, we have to take the data, appropriate data. Here types of data. One is time series data. Data on one or more variables collected over a period of time is called time series data. A time series is a set of observations on the values that a variable taken at different times. Such data may be collected at regular time intervals such as daily. We can take daily observations like stock prices, daily we can take. Weather reports we can also take daily, and on weekly basis we take the figures of money supply, and on monthly basis we take unemployment rate, the consumer price index, and also quarterly basis gross domestic product, and annually we take government budgets. Then for 10 years period we take the census of population, census figures. For every 10 years we collect the census. So, the data may be taken each and every day, that is daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis, quarterly or annually, and for 10 years period. So, this type of data can be called as time series data. Then next, cross section data. The data on one or more variables collected at one point of time is called cross section data. For example, the census of population conducted by the Central Statistical Organization for every 10 years, the surveys of consumer expenditure conducted by National Sample Survey Organization NSSO. Here at one particular point of time, maybe for 10 years period, say in 2001 we have collected our census, Central Statistical Organization conducted census data, and in 2011 also conducted census data. So, here in 2011 they may take different variables. So, how much total population? In total population again segregates like male population, female population, children population, SC population, ST population, PC population, etc., etc. At one particular time different variables we collect. So, this type of data is called cross section data. Then next type of data is pooled data, that is the combination of time series and cross section data are called pooled data. Pooled data can also be called as panel data, longitudinal data or micro panel data. For example, annual sales of 20 firms in an industry for 20 years. Here we take time series and cross section data, both we pool it and then it will be called pooled data. Then after obtaining the data, then we have to estimate the parameters of the model, that is B0 and B1. The statistical technique of regression analysis is the main tool used to obtain the estimates of B0 and B1. Then after obtaining the B0 and B1, the next step is hypothesis testing. The hypothesis testing have three criteria. One is economic criteria, second one is statistical criteria, and third one is econometric criteria. In economic criteria, we see the signs, whether the relationship between dependent variable and independent variable, the relationship is positive or negative. So, that we have to see in the economic criteria. This is a priori criteria, and in the next criteria, that is statistical criteria, this is also called first order test. These are determined by statistical theory and include correlation coefficient. First, we have to find out the correlation between dependent variable and independent variable. Then afterwards, we have to find out the standard error test. The standard error of the estimate is a measure of the dispersion of the estimates around the true parameter. The larger the standard error of a parameter, the less reliable it is, and if the standard error is small, the parameter is more reliable. Then finally, we have to find out the square of the correlation coefficient. This shows the percentage of the total variation of the dependent variable being explained by the changes of the explanatory variables. The statistical criteria are secondary to the primary criteria. Then finally, we have to find out the economic criteria. The economic criteria is a second order test. It determines the reliability of statistical criteria. This test helps us to determine whether the estimates have the desirable properties of like linearity, unbiasedness, consistency, efficiency, sufficiency, etc. That means, whether the B0 and B1 coefficients are followed the properties of estimators or not. If they have followed all the properties like linearity, unbiasedness, consistency, efficiency, sufficiency, etc., then these are reliable. Otherwise, we will not accept the hypothesis. Then next step is forecasting or prediction. We can predict the future values of a dependent variable y on the basis of known or expected future values of explanatory variable x. Then in step 8, using the model for control or policy purposes. An estimated model may be useful to the government or business organizations for control or policy purposes. Then we can summarize the whole model econometric methodology into the following chart. First, we have to frame the economic theory. Then after framing the economic theory, then we have to change that economic theory into mathematical model. In the next step to the mathematical model, we have to introduce the random variable, then it will become the econometric model. Then after finding the econometric model, then we have to collect the data. After collecting the data, then we have to estimate the parameters. Then after estimating the parameters, we have to test the hypothesis. Then finally, forecasting and using the model for control or policy purposes. Then here two types of data. One is theoretical and applied econometrics. Econometrics may be divided into two broad categories: theoretical econometrics and applied econometrics. Theoretical econometrics is concerned with the development of appropriate methods for measuring economic relationships specified by econometric models. In this aspect, econometrics mostly depends on mathematical statistics. For example, one of the tools that are used extensively is the method of least squares. It is concerned with the assumptions of the theoretical method, its properties, and what happens to these properties when one or more of the assumptions of the method are violated. So, this is about theoretical econometrics. And applied econometrics is concerned with the application of econometric methods derived from theoretical econometrics to solve specific economic problems. In applied econometrics, we use the tools of theoretical econometrics to study some special fields of economics, such as the consumption function, investment function, production function, demand function, supply function, etc. In econometric methodology, we have to follow the 8 steps. The first one is economic theory or hypothesis. You take any type of economic theory, that is theory of demand or theory of consumption, theory of investment, theory of markets, etc., etc. Whether this theory is accepted or not, that is universally accepted or not. To test this theory, we have econometric model. So, we have to transform economic theory into the mathematical model. The theory part is completely, we are shifting to the mathematical equations. That is the second step. Then in third step, we have to include the random term, that is u. U is defined by statistical random variable properties. Then after introducing the U term, then we have to search for the suitable data, whether it is time series data or cross section data or pooled data. After collection of the data, then we have to estimate the parameters in the econometric model. They are B0, that is constant variable, constant. B0 is constant. Then B1 is a variable, that is coefficient of the independent variable. These variables we have to estimate in econometric model. After estimating the econometric model, then we have to test the hypothesis, whether we have followed economic criteria, statistical criteria or econometric criteria or not, that we have to check. After checking the criteria, then we can use that estimated model for the forecasting purpose. Then the forecast may be useful to the policy makers or government. So, with this I can conclude the econometric methodology.